Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel and get notifications whenever a new video is uploaded. I've got so much to say on this video. I hope I remember everything. I should have written notes, really. Let's talk about Josh Kelly and David Avanesyan. European champion David Avanesyan fighting Josh Kelly, who has fought at world level, of course. You know, he beat Ray Robinson. Well, he drew with Ray Robinson. Personally, I felt he beat Ray Robinson. But it was a close fight. I personally had it either 7-3 or 6-4 to Josh. But I can understand why. You know, I've got no problem with the draw. I think a few of the rounds were swing rounds. I can understand how a draw came about. Robinson, of course, has operated at world level before. He beat Terence Crawford in the amateurs. It's a guy who's been around the block, amateur pedigree. He's no mug. And it was a big step up from Josh in Oli's 9th fight. So, you know, it was I thought he did just fine, to be honest with you. But there are serious limitations there. And we'll talk about those. I think Josh is a special talent. I'm going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of both guys and how I think the fight could go. While I think Josh is a special talent, there's a difference between being a special talent and being a special fighter. I don't think Josh is a special fighter. He could become a special fighter in the same way that Anthony Yarde's got the tools to become a special fighter, but right now he's not a special fighter either. Josh has some glaring limitations. And this is going to sound quite unpopular, I assume, because I know Adam Booth is a very, very popular trainer. But for me, Adam Booth doesn't suit Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor, I would rather see him being trained by somebody like Peter Fury or somebody like Shane McGuigan. I'm not sure that the style of... Basically, Adam Booth tends to like fighters who are quite evasive, ambush-style fighters on the outside, jump in to set up a big, powerful shot. Evade that first shot, land a big shot, take a guy out. Think David Haye, think George Groves, both big punchers, both on the outside, a lot of upper body movement. You know, throw small combinations, 1-2s basically. So two or threes, sorry. Left hand, right hand, or, you know, something like that. It's all about setting up that big shot. The thing is, Josh Kelly doesn't have the power to do that. He's not that style of fighter. So when he's trying to fight that way, it just doesn't suit him. Whereas someone like Peter Fury, who has languid, lucid type fighters, but they also work off a jab. That's the sort of a guy. Ben Davison's another example of a trainer that I believe would suit him. That's the sort of guy that I believe would suit Josh Kelly, rather than a guy who's trying to set up a power punch, because I don't think Josh Kelly's a powerful puncher. But what Josh Kelly does have, he's got quite a narrow stance. His weight is almost centered. He slips slightly to the left of center, but the fact that he's close to being centered enables him to move in and out. It enables him to move around the ring. He's got unbelievable movement, special movement. You can imagine the guy being unbelievable on the dance floor. He'd probably destroy things like Strictly Come Dancing or Dancing on Ice. I'm sure he'd be amazing at that stuff. Great footwork, great balance. Like I said, he leans slightly off to the left of center. His two punches of choice are to slip a shot and then throw a lead uppercut down the pipe, or slip a shot and throw a straight right hand down the pipe. When he does throw combinations, he can stay in the pocket a little bit too long. We've spoken about that with Josh Warrington recently. That's a major limitation that he's got. We'll get to that later. But one of the biggest problems he has, in my opinion, is an underdeveloped jab. This is the biggest problem he has. And this is why I believe that maybe Adam Booth's not the trainer for him. And if he is, they need to work on this thing. For me, he's got an underdeveloped jab. He doesn't have the power to fight that David Haye type style. David Haye used to throw, and George Groves. George Groves changed after he went to McGuigan, but David Haye used to throw an individual, powerful jab, pot shot jabs that would rock a guy's head back. And he would take his time and just move around the ring, make himself evasive, and then try and set up that right hand. Josh Kelly doesn't have that skill set. It's different. Now, Josh Kelly has two types of jabs, which he showed against Winston Campos, okay, after the draw with Robinson, a fight, like I said, that I thought he won, personally, 7-3, 6-4, no problem with the draw whatsoever, but he had issues in that fight. And against Winston Campos, one of the things he did, he'd either have his arm, I'll sit up a bit, he'd either have his arm in a right angle almost and shoot from there, or he would have quite a high guard, and from there, he's almost pouring down with the jab, and it's a powerful jab. He's looking to throw one pot shot jab, snap a guy's head back. He's not looking to dictate the rhythm. He's not looking to dictate the tempo, and this is a problem for Josh, because one of the things he does, he'll land a big shot and he might affect the opponent. because he's not feather-fisted. He's not a big puncher, but he's not feather-fisted. He might affect the opponent. But because he's not the one leading the tempo or dictating, what he'll do is he'll land and then wait. And he's sitting and he's waiting for the guy to throw a punch so he can counter him. Well, if a guy's hurt, he might not throw a punch immediately. He might take a couple of steps backwards. And Josh will follow him around the ring and put some foot pressure on, even though he doesn't always cut off the ring effectively. Sometimes he'll follow an opponent. But he's right there with his upper body movement and stuff and, showing different looks and giving the guy something to think about. But he's not, working off of that damage that he puts in. And it's not that much damage, really, with that individual jab. When he's on the back foot, what he does, he'll get his back to the ropes often, and he'll stop, and he'll show upper body movement. And again, he's teasing the guy. Go on, throw a punch. If you do, I'm going to counter you. But the guy can just walk into range, and he's waiting. Josh, he's waiting. The guy will throw a punch, Josh will look to counter it. So he's given up the right to earn that range. The guy just walks forward and gets to the point where he's now in range. Not right up close, but mid to long range. He can reach Josh. What I want to see Josh do is develop a jab, which is a consistent jab, a Paulie Malignaggi type jab, a Tyson Fury jab, a Billy Joe Saunders jab, a Larry Holmes jab, a jab to just pump in the guy's face, vary in the speed, vary in the power. You don't have to knock the guy out with the jab all the time. Sometimes when you throw a hard jab, a power jab is good in certain scenarios. If your back's on the ropes and you need to get out of trouble, throw a power jab. If you're looking to really hurt a guy and make a statement, throw a power jab. A power jab is utterly useless as a setup punch. Because if you snap the guy's head back too much and he falls back, it changes that distance. So you can't then follow up with another power shot. So you want to vary a jab. Sometimes powerful, sometimes not. Sometimes fast, sometimes slower. Sometimes to the body, sometimes to the chin, sometimes to the top of the forehead. You're varying it. So that, number one, it's harder to read. And number two, you're deciding what comes off of that jab. Whereas if you're just throwing a power jab like he was doing against Weston Campos on the front foot where he was leading, he was trying to walk Campos down, you're limiting what you're then going to do off of that. Whereas if you're not throwing a jab at all and you're on the back foot, you're just inviting a guy in. So he's not using his attributes effectively, in my opinion. Now, the other issue he's got, I believe, naturally very, very gifted. I'm not sure how much of an understanding he has of the technical issues. And guys, listen, let me just say this. I'm not hating. I'm telling you, he's a very special talent. But the way my mind works, when I'm analysing, I look for problems. You could give me the bet. You could sit here and go to me, break down Floyd Mayweather. You're going to think I'm talking about someone who's not a great fighter. To break down Muhammad Ali, break down Tyson Fury. This is how my mind works. I look at the top fighters and I say, right, how would I fight this guy if I had to fight him? How do I beat him? And then I'm trying to break down the weaknesses, the strengths first, and the weaknesses. How do I expose those weaknesses? How do I take away his strengths? That's how my mind works. So I'm not hating on Josh. But for me, the best fighters, like I said in the last video, and the best actors, for instance, or the best whatever, the best musicians, whatever, are the versatile ones. They're the ones that stand the test of time. They're the ones, if you can do anything, you are the man, right? So for me, I'm looking at limitations. And when I look at Josh Kelly and I'm looking at this underdeveloped jab, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, he's got a potential weapon there that he's not using. Imagine Josh Kelly stepping out with the jab, landing it long and then coming back, like fencing, like Billy Joe Saunders. Imagine that. Now he's jabbing you up. You're struggling to even get close to this guy who's got great reflexes and great footwork. When you then do get close and let go of a big shot, right, I'm finally in, here we go. Then he decides, right, now I'm going to look for the counter. He slips a shot, bang, lands one or two, gets out in an angle. Because sometimes against Weston Campos, for instance, on a couple of occasions, he came out in a straight line. And Campos is able to follow him and he covers up. If he doesn't do that and he's stepping out and he pivots out and he's using his attributes, he's going to start to look brilliant. He's going to be very difficult to get to. But at the moment, he's not using his attributes. Now, one of the things, in my opinion, by the way, he's not using his attributes to the maximum. So he's got all the talent in the world and he's yet still not impressing everybody. Now, Darren Barker recently said, I want to see him throw 4s and 5s, as in combinations. One of the problems he has is that he could end up like Warrington against Lara, where he stays in the pocket too much. And because he doesn't have that great tactical understanding, in my opinion, it's natural gifts, he can get himself into certain situations. So I'll give you the example now of the Robinson fight. If that's the centre line, in line with the camera, right? If you're fighting a southpaw, Robinson was southpaw, fighting out a southpaw stance, when he was looking to step outside the line. On occasion, yes, he would. His favourite shot seemed to be step outside the line, something he did consistently with Campos. Step outside the line, throw a right hand down the pipe. The reason you want to get your foot on the outside of the opponent's lead foot is because it lines up your right hand with his face. Something Avanesyan is very good at. We'll talk about that in a second. If I'm throwing a right hand from here, I've got to come across. I've got to come diagonally. Can you see that? So there's longer to travel, which means there's more of a tell. One of the reasons there's something I've said in the past, there's brake lights on the back of cars, is because as you're driving, if the car stops in front of you, because it's a straight line ahead of you, your brain doesn't register as quickly as a car coming out across. It takes longer for your brain to register the stoppage of movement compared to recognizing movement from a side view. So what happens is, as it's moving that way, there's a sideways element, a lateral element to the movement. Your brain will pick up on it and you're more likely to react to it. Whereas when it's a completely straight line, it takes a split second more to react to it. You could get caught. So what I want to do is if I line up my shoulder with your face, there, I've taken a step outside of the lead shoulder, so outside of the lead leg. Now my shoulder's in line, bang, I lined it down the middle. Josh, on occasion, doesn't actually get his foot on the outside of Robinson's and he still throw that right hand. So his foot would be here rather than there. He's not stepping there with his lead foot. This is Robinson's lead foot. Josh wouldn't step there with his lead foot. Josh would be here. And from here, he'd throw a right hand. Now, Robinson would throw a hook. And as he's thrown a hook, because Josh is coming here to throw the right hand rather than there, when that hook would come in, it would trap Kelly. And Kelly's now in the middle. He's in that hole. Well, Robinson will start to let his hands go. And what does a counterpuncher not really like? Volume. Because you can dodge one, maybe two. But then what? When he's throwing 4s and 5s, you're involved in then a tear-up. Now, he has developed his inside game. You could see he's working on trying to develop an inside game. There were moments where he willingly did that against Robinson, against Campos and stuff like that. He initiates it. He still has a lot of work to do on the inside. For me, there's no head control there. I'd like to see him, rather than throw that, combination and then stay in the pocket, and all of a sudden he's trying to trade inside. I'd like to see him use a stiff arm. Land that right hand, then use your left hand rather than to jab to palm the guy in the face and lock that arm and step out, rather than just throw wild shots and then try and step out backwards in a straight line and get caught. Control his head. Do you know who's brilliant at that, by the way? Lawrence Okolie. And when I do the breakdown of Okolie Glavatsky, we're going to go into just how good Lawrence Okolie's inside game is. It is fantastic. We're going to talk about that when I do that breakdown video. I'm going to try and show you some slides as well. I'm going to try and, change the channel up a little bit. You guys can let me know if you like that. With regards to Josh Kelly, going back to this, in other words, sometimes I feel like he gets himself into situations where he's not thinking. It's just natural talent that he's got and he's fighting off that rather than using tactics. And that can cause him an issue, in my opinion, especially if he comes against a guy who's going to freeze up the body, target the body and work his way up. Because one of the things he does as well, Josh, is use a lot of energy up early, then he tires. And as he tires, he doesn't move as well. Well, if someone's going to be targeting the body, because he's yet to face someone really who's really punished that body, if someone starts punishing the body, that's going to become a whole bigger issue for him. So let's talk about Avanesyan, because one of Avanesyan's best shots is a little shovel left hook to the body. And we'll get to that later. But one of the things Avanesyan does, like I said, he will line you up. He's very good at that. He'll just shift side to side. The jab's in line, bang. He'll shift here, bang. He'll constantly get his shoulder in line with your head to throw a shot. But one of the things Avanesyan tends to do is he tends to jump in with a hook. So let's say he wants to throw, he's a switch hitter. So let's say he's in an orthodox position and he wants to throw a lead left hook or lead right hook. He'll jump in with a right hook and land in a southpaw position. Then he'll throw a second right hook. So he'll throw a wide right hook from an orthodox position, leaping in, crossing his feet over to switch, then a lead right hook and then try and work off that. Well, that can be dangerous because if you're jumping forward in that manner and you're not setting it up and you're just leaping forward, which you can do, someone can take a little step back, time you, bang, right hand down the pipe, you walk onto a big shot. And Josh has the reflexes and the footwork to be able to do that. So that's a potential serious problem for Avanesyan. However, because Josh doesn't pop that jab out, because what's going to make Avanesyan wary about jumping in like that. It's going to be a stiff, solid jab. Well, he doesn't offer that consistent jab moving backwards. So Avanesyan's going to fancy his chances of just walking forward. And because Josh likes, like I said, one of his favourite shots is that consistent. He does it all the time, almost predictably. Not almost, it is predictable. He'll slip to the left and throw that right hand down the pipe. Well, if he's slipping to the left and throwing that right hand down the pipe, don't be surprised if Avanesyan slips that shot and lands that shovel left hook to the liver and hurts Josh, stops Josh, wears Josh down. Look out for that punch, the shovel left hook to the body. Avanesyan could have a lot of success with that. Now, Avanesyan can actually move a little bit too. If I was in Avanesyan's corner, I'd want him getting on the back foot. Everyone keeps talking about, he's going to get on the front foot. Dave Coldwell feels that Avanesyan's only chance is to show toughness and come forward, take shots off the gloves, and hope that he can land something big on Josh. I think Avanesyan's going to move back. He should do anyway if he's smart, and switch that up with jumping forward. Get on the back foot, get Josh coming to you, and change that up with your leaping shots forward. That way Josh might smother his own work, fall into shots as well. And if you can get on the inside against Josh, you can freeze up that, you can draw that right hand down the pipe, land that left shovel hook to the body and slow him down. Then you can start to get on the front foot as the fight wears on. And if you can get him back up against the ropes and target the body and work your way up from there, Josh could have some serious problems. But you've also, like I said, look out for that shot, but you've also got to look out for the shot of the right hand down the pipe from Josh, or even the uppercut down the pipe, if Avanesyan starts to jump forward, particularly because quite often Avanesyan will have a high guard, dip his head forward as he throws shots. So he'll be on the outside, and if he's not leaping in from here, he'll dip his head forward and start throwing shots. If he dips his head forward like that, he's a sitting duck for that lead uppercut, which Josh loves to throw. So they're both going to spot shots that they're going to think, you know what, I can find a home for that. Okay, it's going to be a really interesting fight potentially. Who do I think wins the fight? It's been a long time since we've seen Josh in the ring. For all I know, he's worked on all these things with Adam Booth. He's going to come out there. We're going to see him throw in a jab, a crisp, consistent jab. Avanesyan's going to have nightmares trying to get through it. And when he does get through it, you're going to see Josh moving around, turning him, landing counters, and he's going to look sensational. But the opposing potential there is that Avanesyan's going to look for that right hand counter of Josh's to counter the counter with those shots to the body, slow Josh down, take him into areas he doesn't want to go. And that's something you're definitely going to have to think about. Now, Neil Marsh, I had to check the guy's name just to remember it. No offense, Neil, sorry, mate. Neil Marsh, who is on Team Avanesyan, accused, when these guys have been supposed to had this fight now 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's finally just happened now. He's happening now, hopefully. He accused Adam Booth of trying to change terms, make it a 12-round fight to a 10-round fight. This was back in the day. This is a European title. It's for the EBU title. It's a 12-round fight. Now, we've seen Josh have stamina issues in 10-round fights. So how's he going to cope at 12 rounds? If Avanesyan can target that body, wear him down, take him late, who knows what could happen here. Now, Josh is a couple of inches taller. He's got the longer reach. I believe he's the more naturally talented guy. But like I said, he gives up that gap far too often. If I had to bet, I would go for Josh Kelly to win the fight on points. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Avanesyan take him late or wear him down and really, go to work on him late and end up winning the fight that way on points. I do think Josh Kelly's a tough kid. Just because his nickname's the pretty boy and he fights in that way. A lot of people might question his toughness. I don't. Coldwell believes that the jab will be too much. Like I said, personally, I think his jab's underdeveloped. Unless he's been working on it behind the scenes, if we see the same old Josh Kelly, he could have problems with keeping him at bay. Now, if he's not at bay, he still has the counter-punching ability to be effective against anybody if he starts to understand the angles of how to line Avanesyan up. Avanesyan, like I said, he's very, very good at lining up a guy's head. He looked brilliant doing it against Leharaga, against Del Rio. Del Rio looked terrible, to be honest with you, but go and look at that fight. These are one-round fights, the second Leharaga fight and the Del Rio fight, so check them out today and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. He'll line up that right hand, for instance, very well against Del Rio, and it's sharp and it's straight, and it always gets to the target. Whereas against Kavaliauskas, Mean Machine, you saw that he was having a lot of success doing that too. And Mean Machine he couldn't let his hands go. You know, Tim Bradley was criticising him for not letting go of combinations. Avanesyan was not letting him go of combinations. He was doing very well there. But what you eventually saw was Kavaliauskas land something big, and it was what was happening is that Avanesyan was taking those risks, trying to bypass that jab by jumping in. So is Josh Kelly going to use that jab and move around the ring? That's his best hope. That's the best way to do it. If he goes on the hunt, looking to close Avanesyan down, might not work for him. Avanesyan's worked at a higher level. Josh isn't great on the front foot, I don't think. Let me know what you think, guys. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this fight from a technical perspective. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. God bless.